Okay, and here we'll talk a little bit about training objectives when you are conducting ambush training. And let's say we set up a training scenario, whether we're using a lot of tabletop stuff or airsoft, paintball, or miles gear and blanks. There's going to be some basic objectives. Once you've gotten everybody out, I would suggest having people go through the briefing, PowerPoint presentations, or the tabletop stuff first. But they should be able to know what both side priorities are in that type of a engagement, which means that both the people who are conducting the ambush and the people who are conducting a patrol should have a pretty good idea what their priorities are. If they don't, they need to not be in the game yet. They need to understand what their reactions are to the near ambush and the far ambush, because likely the protocols are going to be different. The far ambush, you may be able to engage them, you may not. It depends on the distances involved and whether or not you can identify their exact location. On the near ambush, you're probably going to have a good idea where the muzzle flashes are coming from. Probably going to have a pretty good idea what that is. And your local unit may develop a standard operating procedure on whether to use escape routes and go to a rally point or to assault the ambushers. Different ideas on that. And again, they should know whether or not they're going to have the resources and be popping smoke. If you're using smoke bombs in training, you get them at the Airsoft and paintball stores. I suggest using them for realism. And then you would understand what the tactical command structure and objectives are for both sides conducting an ambush. I'll get into that a little bit more because we're going to talk about how, gaming for entertainment purposes versus conducting something that would meet a military objectives. But the people need to understand before going into training whether this is mainly to have fun, this is mainly just to get their techniques down, or whether the game involves an actual objective. For example, in the paintball and airsoft arena, some games are played, let's say, as a form of capture the flag or capture the item. Other games are played to simply eliminate the enemy team. So people need to understand what the tactical, what the objectives are, what the tactical command structure is. My situation on this is my opinion, that is that I would tell people to kind of swap it around who's going to be in charge. Swap that around, trade that around, simulate it a few different ways, restart the scenario a few times with different people in charge. Have them simulate if one or two leaders went down and then somebody's put in charge by surprise. Let them play that out. Let them understand how that's going to go. And then the respawn points. You're probably going to have limitations on a number of people that you have available to do the scenario. So what we do is we would use respawning points to simulate somebody getting reinforcements. What I prefer to do is whatever the rally point or Overwatch objective rally point situation was for the people who got ambushed is also their respawn point. One of the things that's going to do is, because it's an observation point, it gives that team, they have the disadvantage of having to walk down the middle of the valley and get ambushed. However, their respawn point is a stronghold. It's a point that they can defend and have a relatively good view of the battlefield. So they may not be able to warn these guys ahead of time on the initial ambush, but once they've respawned, it's a point where it's their reinforcement point. Yeah, it is a vantage point. I would give that team a vantage point to make up for the fact that they were the ones who were initially ambushed. The other thing is on the ambushing team, or we call the defending team spawning point, it's usually at the corner of the V or corner of the L shape, so that if these people are killed off in any of these other points, they respawn and they're generally going to move to one aspect of this or the other. And this may transition from an L shape combat formation to a V shape as these people spread out and maybe other people are trying to outflank each other and all of that. So their respawn point is going to be somewhere at the corner of the L, and then the two respawn points are at the opposite corners of the playing field. The other things you need to understand is that the referees in this, if at all possible, you want the referees in fixed positions on the playing field. One of the things I like to do on the referee situation is just have them parked in a vehicle and observing from the vehicle. That way it's a little bit less of something that the people in the game are going to be dealing with as far as knowing which way the referee's looking or something like that. If it's paintball or if it's paintball or miles gear with blanks, you're just fine having people in vehicles parked down in the playing area. If it's airsoft, the airsoft pellets can break glass. So you got to make a judgment call on whether they're going to be in vehicles or in blinds or something like that. The other way you can do that is you can have cameras set up and some of that things. I really prefer to have the gaming judges at fixed locations and not walking with the patrol, not compromising their location, that sort of thing. The fair call method, luck versus limits as far as weapons goes. As we all know, that a lot of bushes will stop. It'll stop the laser from the miles gear cold. It will stop a lot of a lot of paintball stuff can still shoot through bushes. Airsoft, it's a little mix on what airsoft guns you're using, that sort of thing. That's where the judges come in and make judgment calls on whether something was simply concealment or cover. What we usually do is we call it green cover kill, which means somebody was taking cover behind green material, bushes or something that's obviously not very bulletproof. They were using it as cover, not concealment, and so we declare a green cover kill. If there were multiple shots, if there was only one shot, or if there was only searching fire, we don't declare that to be a green cover kill. We declare that to be a green cover kill if the shooter calls it. He says, I know there's a guy behind that bush. I fired several shots at that bush. That's a green cover kill. That's whether it's airsoft, miles, or paintball. The other thing, of course, is respawn safety. It may not be safe to have that person moving during that time if we've got moving vehicles or if we've got other stuff flying around. And then, of course, we have the safety kill, which is at extreme close range. Some blanks are considered dangerous, so you just run up and declare safety kill. You would check and see if the person actually had any ammo left, because ammo rationing is part of the game. And then respawning, that's done with the tags. And what I'd like to do is some sort of a reward system, let's say extra ammunition or something. If we, extra ammunition on the respawn, if the team simulated carrying a casualty off the field, then we're going to say, okay, there's extra ammo available. Or we may declare body armor hits, where the referee says, yes, there were hits, but we're going to call that a body armor hit because this team has been conducting medical, whereas the other guys just declare themselves dead and go to the respawn point. So that's a judgment call on the part of the game master on that stuff. And everybody involved should understand that if you're using up a lot of people, if you're just declaring dead and respawning a lot, as opposed to trying to accomplish objectives and somebody in charge or who's nominally been placed in charge is actually trying to preserve his forces and accomplish an objective, we may declare overall winners on that on the basis of the number of losses and respawns versus whether or not the objective was actually accomplished. That's where we talk about things like kill ratio and all that. On the other hand, if everybody's just sneaking around and not engaging each other, it's not a very entertaining game. And if you're conducting this training commercially, let's say with airsoft, paintball, or blanks, although you're not going to see a whole lot of commercial training with blanks, if you're conducting the training commercially, you need to have some entertainment value, which is done with engagements. It's done with people actually attacking each other. And so you need to understand those prerogatives and priorities when you're doing the training from a commercial standpoint. If it's not entertaining, it's not going to keep the attention span going, and you may end up losing value of the training with the group of people that you're dealing with. And that's whether it's the value that they felt they paid for the training, or if it's a military government organization, you got to realize the amount of manpower, even for a National Guard weekend drill, the amount of money that's actually been spent for everybody to be there. And we need that money spent and that time spent to be training, not counting tent stakes and not fucking around with PowerPoint presentations. I really want the time when everybody's there to be out doing stuff, not back at the armory counting tent stakes and not watching PowerPoint presentation, which they could have just as well watched on some sergeant's YouTube channel before everybody got there. We'll do more later.